Imagine the frozen Alaskan tundra trembling beneath your feet, not from an earthquake, but from a slick, clawed monster swimming through solid earth like it's water, ready to burst up and drag you into an icy abyss. You know that gut twist when nature feels like it's watching you, hiding dangers in the shadows? Today, we're diving into the bone-chilling world of the Amikuk from Yupik folklore, a shape-shifting spirit that blurs land and sea, hunting humans with ruthless cunning and packing lessons on survival that might just explain those eerie vibes in the wild. By the end, you'll uncover its slimy form, deadly tricks, and why ignoring it could cost you everything, plus how it's still shaping lives today. Let's rewind to the vast, unforgiving landscapes of Alaska, where the Yupik people have carved out existence for thousands of years, their stories whispered around seal oil lamps to decode the Arctic's brutal secrets. Picture a remote village on the Bering Sea coast, winds howling like lost souls, families wrapped in thick furs as elders lean forward, voices gravelly from years of cold air, recounting the Amikuk's terror. This creature isn't some made-up bogeyman to scare kids straight. It's a visceral embodiment of the wild's unpredictability, a reminder that the line between life and death is as thin as cracking ice. In Yupik oral traditions, handed down like precious tools for survival, the Amikuk looms as a teacher wrapped in dread. The world demands your respect, or it swallows you whole. Hunters eyeing distant horizons, or crossing endless tundra knew that subtle rumble underfoot wasn't wind or shifting snow. It was the Amikuk stirring, a cue to halt, strain your ears, and hope you weren't on its menu. One gripping legend starts with a seasoned kayaker slicing through choppy waves, his Umiak, a sealskin boat, gliding like a shadow over the gray sea. He's after seals for winter stores, the kind of hunt that keeps families fed through endless nights. But the water goes unnaturally calm, mirror-like in a place where currents never sleep. Then, a deep thump echoes from below, vibrating through his paddle. His kayak lurches, and from the depths, long, sinewy arms erupt, wrapping the hull like living ropes. He jabs with his harpoon, but the grip tightens, yanking him under in a blackness where cold squeezes like a vice. He thrashes, lungs burning, glimpsing a form, elongated, muscular, eyes like glowing coals. Breaking surface, he gasps air, but the Amikuk hauls him back, only releasing after a desperate plea to the spirits. He washes ashore, body bruised, mind fractured, muttering of a beast that swims both waves and dirt. Villagers gather, nodding solemnly. They've lost kin to similar fates. This isn't mere entertainment. It's a survival manual, stressing that overconfidence or ignoring signs invites the invisible horrors lurking just out of sight. These tales didn't sprout from nothing. They're rooted in the Yupik's intimate bond with their environment, where every ripple or tremor could mean life or death. Anthropologists from the University of Alaska estimate that Yupik folklore, documented in over 500 oral narratives collected since the 1800s, dedicates nearly 40% to creatures like the Amikuk, blending fear with practical wisdom. It's like nature's own alarm system, evolved over generations to keep people sharp in a land where temperatures plunge to minus 50 degrees Fahrenheit and blizzards erase trails in hours. Now, sketching out this beast's look, descriptions shift like drifting snow, varying by storyteller and region, but core traits paint a vivid horror. Most envision it as a towering, wiry humanoid, body stretched long and lean, covered in dark, leathery skin that shines slick like oiled seal hide after a dive. Hairless and rippling with muscle, it's built for seamless motion, no bulk to slow it down. 4 slender arms, flexible as tentacles, end in hooked claws, perfect for grasping slippery fish or hapless humans. Eyes burn with that eerie reddish-orange glow, cutting through fog, twilight, or underwater murk like predator beacons. The mouth? A nightmare gash lined with multiple rows of needle-sharp teeth, evolving in tails to shred flesh or crunch bone with ease. Some versions blend human and aquatic traits, an eel-like undulation when moving or octopus fluidity in its limbs, letting it twist through tight crevices. On land, it burrows like a mole but swims the soil, creating those telltale thumps, rhythmic, like a heartbeat from hell, that send hunters scrambling. Yupik elders describe the ground's quiver as the earth's pulse quickening, a sensation that saved lives by giving seconds to react. In one detailed account from the Yukon Delta, gathered by ethnographer Margaret Lantis in the 1940s, survivors spoke of its skin mottled in grays and blacks, camouflaging against rocky seabeds or shadowed tundra, with a faint bioluminescent sheen underwater, luring curious fish or people closer. This form isn't random. It symbolizes the Arctic's dual threats, land's isolation and sea's depths, mirroring Yupik reliance on both for food, travel, and life. Studies from the Alaska Native Heritage Center note how such myths foster ecological respect. For instance, overharvesting seals might awaken the Amikuk, tying conservation to supernatural consequence. Data from modern surveys show 65% of Yupik elders still reference these stories in teaching youth about sustainable hunting, per a 2020 report by the Bering Sea Elders Group. Unlike mythical clans with gods, demons, or family sagas, the Amikuk prowls solo, no pack, no lineage, just eternal isolation. In Yupik worldview, it's an elemental essence, raw and unbound, representing nature's wild indifference. No origin myths tie it to creators or ancestors. It's timeless, like the permafrost itself, a force that simply is. This lone status cranks up the dread. Unpredictable, without patterns from kin or allies, it's the ultimate wild card. It echoes Yupik philosophy of harmony. Every entity has purpose, even predators, pushing humans to know their place. Without bonds, it's pure survival drive, a stark reflection for isolated travelers facing blizzards or open water alone. In one isolated narrative from Nunavak Island, collected in the 1920s by Edward Curtis, the Amikuk emerges from ancient ice cracks, born of the land's first freeze, forever wandering without rest or companion. This solitude teaches vigilance. No herd to spot, just sudden strikes. Anthropological insights from Nud Rasmussen's 1920s expeditions highlight how such independence in myths reinforces community. Lone dangers drive people together for safety. Names evolve across Yupik dialects, like echoes over vast distances. Amikuk in central regions, Amikut or Amikut in western variants, Kamundjalrite emphasizing its humanoid trickster side. Coastal stories favor Amikuk for its sea prowess, while inland ones lean Kamundjalrite for earth-burrowing feats. These shifts map to terrain. River Yupik dread its under-ice ambushes, tundra groups its soil swims. Linguists at the Alaska Native Language Center trace Amikuk to Proto-Eskimo roots meaning burrower or swimmer, apt for its fluid domain crossing. Over 20 variants documented in Edward Nelson's 1899 Bering Sea ethnography show how names adapt, yet all convey shape-shifting dread. Powers pack a punch, blending brute force with supernatural slyness. Core ability, treating Earth like liquid, gliding through dirt or rock, liquefying surfaces to ensnare victims in quicksand traps. Imagine trekking solo. Ground softens to mud, sucking you down, then claws erupt, hauling you below to suffocate in darkness. In seas, it's apex predator, lurking under ice to capsize kayaks or snatch swimmers, limbs coiling like pythons in freezing depths. Shape-shifting's the sly ace, morphs into humans, approaching as weary travelers with sleds, offering gifts that escalate, beads to furs to treasures. Tradition dictates, ignore, don't turn or speak till offers cease. Grab the last, riches pour, but you're enslaved, mind or body. A Kuskokwim River tale. Woman meets stranger on tundra, withstands temptations till a golden harpoon. Takes it, home overflows with game, but nights she's pulled to serve, wandering eternally as its minion. When attacked, it duplicates /1, two appear, swarming till overwhelmed. This futility lesson, Aggression multiplies woes per Yupik nonviolence ethos. Folklore analyses by and Fienup-Riordan note 70% of Amikuk stories end with peaceful resolutions yielding better outcomes. The real grind. In a world where one blizzard strands you, how do you live without constant fear paralyzing hunts or travels? Yupik battled starvation, exposure. Amikuk personified those, turning accidents into hubris punishments. Problem: balance myths caution with daily risks. Less paranoia isolates or starves communities. But here's the twist that amps up the Amikuk's dread even more. It's not just a mindless predator lurking in the shadows. It's a cunning trickster that can wear a human face, luring you in with temptations that test your very soul, and one wrong choice could bind you to its will forever. What if that stranger you meet on the icy trail isn't lost at all, but the Amikuk in disguise, offering gifts that promise riches but deliver chains? We're picking up right where we left off, peeling back more layers of this Yupik nightmare, from its bone-chilling powers to the real-life chills it still sends through communities today. Hang in there, because by the time we surface, you'll see how this ancient spirit is more alive than ever, shaping everything from art to survival in a changing world. Diving deeper into those heart-pounding stories that kept Yupik villages on edge, let's unpack another layer of how the Amikuk strikes fear without ever showing its true form at first. Imagine a young woman gathering berries on the tundra in late summer, the ground spongy under her boots, the air buzzing with mosquitoes like tiny warnings. She's alone, miles from home, when the earth gives a subtle shiver. Not wind, not an animal, but that rhythmic thump echoing from below. She freezes, remembering elders' words. Don't run, don't fight, just listen. But then a figure appears on the horizon, a traveler, sled-laden, looking weary from the trail. He calls out, offers a small bead necklace as thanks for directions. She turns away, silent as taught. He presses, next a fine fur pelt, then tools carved from walrus ivory, each gift grander. Her heart races, greed tugs, but she holds firm till he stops, vanishing like mist. She returns home safe, but with a tale that spreads. Face it too soon, and you're lost. These encounters weren't rare folklore fluff. They were lifelines, etched into Yupik culture to sharpen instincts in a land where isolation kills as quick as cold. Elders used them around fires, voices dropping low to mimic the thump, drawing kids in with wide eyes. One variation from the Kuskokwim River Delta, recorded by missionary John Kilbuck in the 1880s, tells of a whole family tempted. The traveler visits their yurt, gifts piling, fish, hides, even rare shells from distant shores. The father cracks first, turning to accept a gleaming knife. Instantly, the Amikuk sheds its skin, arms multiplying, dragging him under the floorboards into earth that swallows like waves. The family flees, but forever marked, teaching that family bonds mean nothing if one gives into impulse. It's raw stuff, blending horror with hard truths. In the Arctic, where resources scarcer than sunlight in winter, temptation's the real killer. Pushing into the Amikuk's raw power set, beyond the shape-shifting, its earth-swimming isn't just a gimmick. It's a masterclass in ambush that turns the ground you trust into a trap. Picture crossing a frozen river, ice thick as a man's height, when cracks spiderweb, not from above, but below. The Amikuk liquefies the solid, turning turf to mush or ice to slush, sucking you down like quicksand on steroids. Hunters described it as the land breathing, a pulse that builds, then boom, claws erupt, yanking legs first, body vanishing in a swirl of dirt or water. In sea hunts, it's worse. Kayakers feel a bump, then arms coil the boat, flipping it like a toy, victim plunged into depths where hypothermia hits before drowning. Data from survival stats. Arctic drowning rates hover at 5 times the U.S. average, per CDC reports. Echo this, with many unexplained cases aligning with myth spots. But the multiplying? That's where it gets psychological, hitting like a gut punch on human hubris. Strike it with a spear or knife, and instead of dying, it splits. 1 becomes 2, then 4, swarming like shadows come alive. A Nunavak island legend, captured in Diamond Genesis' 1924 ethnography, spins of a brave warrior spotting ripples, thrusting his harpoon deep. The Amikuk shudders, divides into twins, each identical, claws slashing. He fights, but they quadruple, overwhelming till he's buried alive. It's a stark Yupik nod. Violence begets more violence. Better to evade or appease than confront. Modern psychanalyses, like those in Lydia Black's 1980s works on Eskimo folklore, link this to trauma coping. Myths teaching de-escalation in a culture where feuds could doom small groups. Names keep morphing, adding mystery layers. In Southwest dialects, Amikuk stresses its multi-arm grasp. Eastern ones favor Kamundjalrite for the human-eater vibe. Coastal fishers call it Amikuk for wave dives, while Bering interior groups use variants tying to burrow sounds. Linguists like Michael Krauss in the 1970s traced these to ancient Inuit-Yupik splits, words evolving over 4,000 years, always centering fluidity. Over 100 name tweaks in oral archives of the Yupik Language Center show adaptation. Post-contact, some blended with Russian Vodyanoi water spirits, but core dread stays. The core snag bites hard. In a place where every step risks thin ice or hidden crevasses, how do you thrive without letting Amikuk fear lock you indoors? Starve your people? Yupik navigated famines, polar bear threats, endless nights. The myth amplified those, framing slips as spiritual fails from ignoring signs. Challenge: weave caution into life without breeding constant dread, turning communities inward or reckless in defiance. Exploration sparked innovations. Hunters developed listening walks, pausing every mile to feel ground vibes, avoiding hot zones. Shamans brewed protective teas from tundra herbs like wormwood, sipped before trips to blur the Amikuk site. Villages mapped taboo areas, river bends or hill dips where thumps echoed most, shared in seasonal gatherings. In a clever twist from 19th century accounts by Henry Eliot, groups used decoys, leaving fish offerings at edges, drawing it away while hunting. These hacks evolved, blending with tech. Today, GPS apps from Yupik devs flag myth zones based on elder lore, merging old wisdom with new tools. Development ramped as contact changed landscapes. Russian fur traders in the 1700s brought guns, tempting aggressive hunts, but myths warned, shoot the Amikuk, it multiplies, echoing failed expeditions where overarmed parties vanished. Post-1950s oil booms thawed lands, waking it in new tales. A 2010 study by the Yukon River Intertribal Watershed Council notes 25% spike in unstable grounds, tied to increased Amikuk sightings and folklore revivals. Climax explodes in shaman duels that flip the script. A standout from lower Yukon. Shaman confronts after village losses at a fog-shrouded lagoon. Earth erupts, Amikuk towering, arms lashing like whips, eyes searing. Shaman offers a gift, his own carved likeness. Beast grabs, but mirror trick confuses, forms multiplying wildly till they clash, shattering in chaos. It wails, sinking. Shaman emerges victorious, village renewed, but with a limp, reminder that wins cost. Exploration birth coping. Pre-hunt rituals, spirit offerings at shores. Shamans develop talismans, bone carvings with protective runes, worn to dull its pull. Villages mapped hotspots, tremor-prone areas avoided solo. In a modern twist, elders blend with science. Seismic data from USGS aligns with old sites, validating lore. Development saw tales adapt. Climate change thaws permafrost, waking Amikuk in new spots. For 2023 Yupik Council reports showing 30% rise in erosion-linked vanishings. Tying it off, the Amikuk lives on, far from dusty tales. It's Yupik strength, fueling masks in Portland Art Museum, where carvings capture its glow for education. Artists like Phillip Charette sculpt modern versions, weaving climate themes. Thawing ice freeze, it symbolizing environmental payback. Globally, it's in Until Dawn games as ice lurkers, net geo docks, paralleled to Navajo skinwalkers for shapeshifts or Algonquian Wendigo for hunger drives. But for Yupik, it's core. Kids learn via stories at culture camps. 90% of youth programs, including it per Alaska Native reports, aligning with green pushes like opposing Pebble Mine to calm spirits.